Hi, church. Good morning. It's good to be with you. My name is Brewer, and I'm the director of the high school ministry here at North Coast Calvary Chapel. As we get going with this daily hope, I have a question for you. Have you ever been given a task that at the time you weren't quite sure you were ready for? Like maybe it was a new job or a promotion at your workplace or being team lead on a project. Or maybe it was a little bit more personal, like marriage or parenthood. If I'm being honest, I was nervous to step into this director role. I wasn't sure if I was ready. I didn't know if I had what it took to do this well. So I was intimidated as I stepped into this role. Or marriage. I got married 6 months ago, and as ready as I felt walking down the aisle and standing at the altar with my now husband, nothing can prepare you for marriage, for what that covenant of two becoming one means until you're in it, no matter how ready you feel. So whatever your examples are in that, I believe Paul is an expert, and we see that in Titus, but that Paul was an expert at seeing the potential in people and empowering them to become even better, to empowering them to live into their God-given calling, to that higher standard that we're called to as children of God. And we see that through Titus, not just through Titus, but we see that in the way that he believed in the power of discipleship, how no matter where he went, Paul left people in his wake that he trained, that he mentored, that he passed the torch to in order to continue the work when he himself physically left. He was an expert at this. And we see that here with Titus. Titus was one of his disciples, one of his mentees. And what is happening here, the context to set us up a little bit, is that Paul has left Titus on the island of Crete, which is one of the Greek islands. Let me tell you, I've had a lot of mentors in my life. None of them have ever left me on an island, so I'm grateful for that. But Paul left Titus here on Crete with some tasks. I think because he was confident in the training that he'd given him, but also sometimes you don't know what you don't know. You got to do the job in order to know how to do the job. Sometimes it takes that little step of faith, even if you don't quite feel ready for the task ahead of you, to believe that you are trained and you are equipped and you are going to be okay, right? Not just at the physical things, but also to believe that the Holy Spirit in you is there to help you along the way as well. And so that's where we are here with Titus and Paul. Paul's writing this letter to Titus basically to give him some tasks and to encourage him. But he's continuing this discipleship relationship with this guy that he had trained. He's not just abandoning him. He's checking on him and giving him some things to do. And those things are this. One is to name elders for the church of Crete. So basically the Cretans at this time were known to be immoral, to be liars, to be cheats. Like they weren't people who had a great reputation. And, naturally this is the island that Paul left Titus on. So his main job was to appoint elders, and these people were blameless. They were righteous. They upheld honor in their homes. They respected their wives and their kids, right? They were people who would have brought integrity back to the church of Crete, because basically the people of Crete were saying that they were Christians. They said they believed in God, but their actions were speaking something different. And the integrity of the church was really important to Paul. And so one of Titus's jobs was to appoint elders in order to maintain that integrity. But it was also to help with some of the confusion that was happening at the time. So there were Judaizers in Crete, which these are basically Jews, like pretty extreme Jews, who are telling Gentiles, if you're going to become a Christian, you have to first become a Jew and follow all the Jewish customs in order to get there, which wasn't the case. Obviously, we live under the new law under Christ, and he abolished all that. But the new Christians didn't know that, and they were getting really confused. And so Titus's role on Crete, other than appointing elders, was also rebuking the people to make their faith sound, to make them realize that what they were doing wasn't in line with what God was asking them to do, but also to kind of ease some of this confusion that was happening for these new believers. And so this is the encouragement that I believe we have, that God has for us through this first chapter of Titus, is that God sees potential in you. Titus was specifically commissioned by Paul to rebuke these people. We don't like rebuke. We don't like discipline. We don't like being told we're not doing things correctly. But in order for the Cretans to understand how how their actions were affecting others, they needed to be rebuked, but also for their own faith to realize that's not how you do it, but here's how you can do it and how you can do it better. Rebuke was crucial in this case in order for them to turn and live out this faith that God wanted them to live. So no matter where you find yourself in this spectrum, whether it's like Titus or whether it's like the Cretans needing to come back, God sees potential in you. You're not too far gone. You will never be too far gone. God sees potential in you, and he is calling you to a higher place as his child. There's potential. God sees potential in you, and he sees power in you, and he wants to use you. And along those lines, Paul is showing us here, and I think it's important for us to remember that we are called to pass the torch. The gospel should not stay internally in us. We are called to go make disciples of all nations. Paul was an expert at it. He was always training younger pastors to take on the mantle and be the hands and feet of Jesus to the next generation. And that's what we are called to do as well. So my challenge to you, as long as being encouraged that like God's going to use you to multiply his gospel, to multiply his kingdom, is to assess kind of how things are going and see how you can take this next step. How can you take one step in passing the torch and discipling and mentoring the next generation so that they can know Jesus in a real way and then pass that on to the next? How exciting is it that we are called into the legacy building of Christ? And that's what I believe Paul is communicating, and God is communicating through Paul's letter to Titus here. It's great to be here with you, church. I love being part of this church body. Have a wonderful day.